In 2008, on a factory floor in Shenzhen, a Chinese engineer named Huang Chuanfu poured himself a glass of his own company's battery electrolyte and drank it right there in front of the chairman of a Berkshire Hathaway subsidiary. "Doesn't taste good," he said, and offered the man a sip. The Berkshire guy declined. 3 years later, Bloomberg's Betty Liu asked Elon Musk on camera whether BYD was a competitor. Musk laughed out loud. "Have you seen their car?" he said. "I don't think they have a great product. Their technology is not very strong. I think their focus should be on making sure they don't die in China." That clip has aged about as well as Greek yogurt left in the sun for a few days. And the reason why tells you something much bigger than cars. Last year, BYD sold 4.27 million vehicles. Tesla sold 1.79 million, its first annual decline since 2011. BYD's revenue hit 107 billion. Tesla's was 97.7 billion. A Chinese car maker outsold the most valuable automaker on earth in dollars in a single year. BYD is one chapter in a much longer story that includes drones, coffee chains, smartphones, batteries, and AI models. A story where the mental model most Americans carry around about Chinese industry, the one where China makes cheap knockoffs, expired about a decade ago. It was installed during a different era for different reasons, and it's now costing real people real money. So I want to walk through 4 things today. The actual numbers between BYD and Tesla, because they're more lopsided than you think. The broader picture across industries, the historical precedent that shows this has happened twice before, and the psychological mechanism that explains why smart people keep missing it. Let's start with what BYD actually ships. In 2024, 1.76 million pure electric vehicles plus 2.49 million plug-in hybrids. By 2025, BYD was delivering 2.26 million pure battery EVs alone and well over 4 million new energy vehicles total. Tesla, meanwhile, fell to 1.64 million. Now, look at the manufacturing footprint. Tesla has 5 assembly sites. Fremont since 2010, Shanghai since 2019, Berlin and Austin both coming online in 2022, plus the Nevada battery plant. Well enough, but BYD runs more than 30 production bases. Their first overseas passenger car plant opened in Rayong, Thailand on July 4th, 2024. Built in 16 months. Cost about $500 million. A Hungarian plant in Szeged, $4 billion investment, ramping up to 300,000 vehicles a year, began trial production in January 2026. And in October 2025, President Lula of Brazil cut the ribbon on a $978 million BYD complex in Camaçari, built on the exact site of a Ford factory that had closed in January 2021, which eliminated 4,000 jobs. BYD employed over 900,000 people as of September 2024, roughly 7 times Tesla's workforce, including a 110,000 person R&D organization, the largest in the automotive industry. They built their own batteries, the Blade LFP design that survives nail penetration without catching fire, their own chips, their own motors, their own seats. Now, the product lines. The BYD Seagull launched in April 2023 at roughly $10,000. A usable urban EV with respectable range. No American car maker can match that at twice the price. The Yangwang U8, a quad-motor luxury offloader that can pivot 360 degrees in place and, in a demonstration that went viral, float. And then there's the valuation. Tesla's trailing PE ratio sits between 317 and 385 as of mid-April 2026. BYD's is between 20 and 24. Tesla trades at roughly 15 to 20 times the auto industry median. BYD trades in line with Ford. You'll often see this waved away with a line like, Tesla isn't a car company, which is more or less true. Its premium is no longer about cars and hasn't been for some time. It's about full self-driving, promised cross-country by 2017, robo-taxis by 2020, still SAE level 2 in 2026. The cybercab Musk unveiled at a Warner Brothers studio on October 10th, 2024, arrived an hour late in a two-seater with no steering wheel and a claimed sub-$30,000 price by before 2027. Cathie Wood's ARK Invest carries a 5-year price target of $2,600, roughly a $10 trillion market cap, predicated almost entirely on autonomous ride-hail. Meanwhile, the actual product line that's supposed to support all of this is aging pretty visibly. The Model S launched in 2012, Model X in 2015, Model 3 in 2017, Model Y in 2020. The Cybertruck, the most recent edition from November 2023, has had 8 recalls in its first 15 months, including an April 2024 recall of the entire built fleet. A March 2025 recall of all 46,096 trucks on the road occurred because stainless steel trim panels were literally flying off while driving. Owners started reporting rust on the stainless body within 11 days of ownership. Musk himself conceded on X that, quote, the wiper is what troubles me most, end quote, about the truck's single 4-foot giga wiper. Against Musk's projection of 250,000 Cybertrucks a year, Tesla sold roughly 39,000 in all of 2024. The planned $25,000 Model 2, the one product that would have actually pressured BYD's Seagull, was shelved in early 2024 when Musk pivoted to go, in his words, balls to the walls for autonomy. BYD is making better cars, cheaper, at higher margins in more factories with more engineers, and trade at 1/15 of Tesla's earnings multiple. BYD's 2024 gross margin held near 20%, while Tesla slid from a 2022 peak of around 30% down to 17.9%. Now, the car story is vivid because BYD is a single named rival in a narrative where Americans expected the hero to win cleanly. But BYD is a chapter, not the book. In every consumer hardware category where Chinese firms have competed on the merits, they have generally won. DJI holds roughly 70% of the global civilian drone market. At its peak, over 90% of the consumer segment. And the list of Western competitors who tried is a graveyard. GoPro's Karma drone launched October 23rd, 2016 and was recalled November 8th, 2016 after batteries disconnected mid-flight, discontinued January 2018. 3D Robotics, founded by Chris Anderson, the editor of Wired, ceased consumer manufacturing in March 2016. An anonymous employee called it, quote, a $100 million blunder based on ineptitude. Lilly Robotics collected $34.8 million in pre-orders for its autonomous selfie drone and shipped 0 units before filing Chapter 11. And Skydio, the Silicon Valley darling, with $715 million raised, a $2.2 billion foundation. Founders from MIT and Google's Project Wing announced in August 2023 it was abandoning the consumer market entirely. The US Congress has now spent 5 years trying to legislate DJI out of the American market. The tariffs and bans appear to be evidence of competitiveness, not its opposite. By the way, if you're getting value out of this, subscribing actually helps me make more of this kind of research. Most viewers aren't subscribed, and it makes a real difference. Thanks. Coffee is the same story. Luckin Coffee committed one of the most spectacular securities frauds in modern history, fabricating 2.2 billion RMB in 2019 sales, crashing 80% in a single day, delisting from NASDAQ, paying a $180 million SEC fine, going into bankruptcy. Then it re-emerged, passed Starbucks in China's store count in 2023 and hit 30,000 stores by February 2026. Its first US stores opened in Manhattan on June 30th, 2025. A 16-ounce strip at $3.45, undercutting Starbucks's at $3.65. On September 4th, 2023, Luckin launched a Maotai flavored latte, a collaboration with China's iconic Baijiu maker, and sold 5.42 million coffee cups on day one. over 100 million RMB in revenue from a single drink on a single day. At that point, you're looking at a cultural operating system that happens to sell coffee. And Luckin isn't even the largest. Mishua Bingcheng, founded by Zhang Huangchao in 1997 with a 3,000 RMB loan from his grandmother, operated 53,000 stores globally by the end of 2025. More than McDonald's, more than Starbucks, more than Subway. Its Hong Kong IPO was oversubscribed 5,125 times on the retail tranche, an exchange record. Huawei's Mate 60 Pro, launched with a 7nm chip that the US export control regime was supposed to have made impossible, sold 1.6 million units in 6 weeks. For full year 2024, Huawei shipped 46 million smartphones in China, beating Apple's 42.9 million. Xiaomi's SU7 sedan took 88,898 firm orders in its first 24 hours. CATL holds 38% of the global EV battery market, supplying Tesla, BMW, Volkswagen, and Ford. And in January 2025, DeepSeek's open source R1 model, trained for a claimed $6 million, wiped $589 billion off NVIDIA's market cap in a single day. The largest one-day loss in American stock market history. What's happening to the American perception of China right now has happened twice before this century. In the 1950s, made in Japan was American shorthand for cheap, shoddy, and disposable.
No wonder this circuit failed. It says made in Japan.
Toyota's first US launch, the Toyopet Crown in 1958, was such a disaster it was discontinued by 1961. The turnaround took decades. By 1979, Ezra Vogel's Japan as #1 was telling Harvard University press readers that America is still unprepared to learn from countries outside Europe. By 1989, Toyota was launching Lexus at the Detroit Auto Show. America did not process this information well. In June 1982, 2 Detroit auto workers mistook a Chinese-American draftsman named Vincent Chin for Japanese and fatally assaulted him with a baseball bat. The judge sentenced them to 3 years probation and a $3,000 fine. In 1987, 9 members of Congress smashed a Toshiba radio with sledgehammers on the Capitol steps. Michael Crichton's Rising Sun was the #1 bestseller in 1992, precisely the year Japan's asset bubble burst. The Korean arc ran the same route, compressed. The 1986 Hyundai Excel was a late-night punchline. Samsung in the 1990s was a low-end appliance maker. By 2024, it held 20.8% of global smartphones against Apple's 17%. Then the cultural layer caught up. Psy's Gangnam Style was the first YouTube video to cross 1 billion views. BTS topped Billboard. Parasite became the first non-English film to win Best Picture. Squid Game was watched in 111 million households in 17 days. Each time, industrial ascendance preceded cultural ascendance by about a decade, and American perception trailed both by another decade. The China arc is further along than most American commentators admit. TikTok is the most downloaded app of the decade. When Washington briefly banned it in January 2025, 500,000 Americans migrated in 48 hours to Xiaohongshu, an explicitly Chinese app that had never marketed itself in the West and called themselves TikTok refugees. Chinese language content topped the US App Store. The facts are all public. The willingness to update the model is what changes. Thomas Kuhn published The Structure of Scientific Revolutions in 1962 to describe paradigm shifts in physics and chemistry, but it reads now like he's describing the American financial press. Those phenomena that will not fit the box, Kuhn wrote, are often not seen at all. That's a precise description of every equity analyst who looks at BYD outselling Tesla by 2 million units and reaches for Chinese overcapacity, the phrase Janet Yellen brought back from her April 2024 trip, instead of the simpler explanation, Chinese competitive advantage. The tariff response, the US president quadrupling Chinese EV tariffs from 25% to 100% in May 2024, the EU slapping duties on BYD, Canada matching in August, buys time, but it is not buy capability. Tesla trades at PE 329, in part because the American imagination has nowhere else to put its narrative of industrial self-esteem. Rivian delivered 51,579 vehicles in 2024. Lucid delivered 10,241 on life support from Saudi Arabia's public investment fund. Those are the American alternatives. At those volumes, calling them competitors requires an exceptionally generous definition of the word. Charlie Munger died in November 2023, having spent the last 15 years of his life trying to explain Wang Chuan Fu to Americans. In 2022, he told his Daily Journal audience that BYD was, quote, one of the greatest damn businesses I ever saw. Most of his audience smiled politely and asked about Berkshire's Apple position. Kuhn quoted Max Planck on how paradigms actually fall. Quote, a new scientific truth does not triumph by convincing its opponents and making them see the light, but rather because its opponents eventually die and a new generation grows up that is familiar with it. The 24-year-olds who grew up with DJI as the only drone brand, who know Luckin as the $3.45 latte they can actually afford, who watched Xiaomi's SU7 reveal on Weibo, will not need to be convinced. They already live in the new paradigm. The old one is just taking a while to finish its quarterly earnings call. Back in September 2008, Berkshire paid $230 million for roughly 10% of BYD at 8 Hong Kong dollars a share. Munger had been introduced to Wang by Li Lu, and after Sokol came back from that factory tour where Wang drank the electrolyte, Sokol returned a believer and Munger pushed Buffett to invest. Munger told Fortune that Wang was, quote, a combination of Thomas Edison and Jack Welch. Buffett bought, and the American financial establishment mostly shrugged. The paradigm shift doesn't announce itself with a press release. It just shows up in the numbers quarter after quarter until one day you realize the world you were analyzing doesn't exist anymore. That same dynamic is playing out in AI right now, where assumptions about who's ahead are being rewritten just as fast, and the stakes are arguably higher. If you want more breakdowns like this, I write a newsletter that goes deeper on these topics regularly. Link is in the description. And if this is your first time here, subscribing is how you see the next one. I'll see you there.